トップした。ふっ。バトル体験を改善し、2倍速ってこんなもん？誰かな。
全ては星々の選択。星々よ、開拓者たちに真なる祝福を。
私を楽しませてくれる？ガツンとくるやつで。
Hello everyone, and welcome back to another video. With the closed beta coming to an end very soon, I thought it'd be great to give you folks a quick character breakdown and analysis of Blade, since he's likely to be a very popular character come full release, and he is right now currently my favorite character in Honkai Star Rail. So all that being said, I want to jump straight into things, and we'll start off with the overall history of what Blade is. So little is really known right now about the character as far as what he does as far as his lore is concerned, but we do know that he is part of a faction known as the Stellaron Hunters, which consist of himself, Kafka, and Silver Wolf. And so we know that he is obviously part of the organization that collects Stellarons, and so that is all we really know about his personality, or at least to some extent what his motive is in the game of Honkai Star Rail. So let's move on to what we do know, and that is the in-game mechanics of the character. So what does Blade do? What is Blade's ability? What is Blade's role in Honkai Star Rail as a character? And we'll start off with the details. So as you can see, Blade is a wind damage character, and he is part of the destruction path, which means that he is typically a character that you want to be playing on the field as much as possible. They tend to be more heavily focused on doing heavy amounts of damage in quick succession, and that is exactly what Blade represents, a main DPS type of character. And so based on his stats, you can clearly see that his HP is really high at 6200, and I'll go into the reasons why. But first, we'll kick things off with the basic attack. So basic attack states that Blade does 80% of his attack as wind damage to an enemy, and it's called Shard Sword. Then we have his skill. This is where things get a little bit juicy, and I'll have to explain things in more detail. So Hellscape is the name of the skill, and it consumes 30% of Blade's max HP to immediately advance action forward by 100%. So advancing forward, or advancing action forward in Honkai Star Rail, means that you immediately get your turn by 100%. So once you activate your skill, you immediately have your turn and you're able to act once you've activated. Now, in addition, damage increases by 26%, and basic attack Shard Sword is enhanced to Force of Swords for 3 turns. So what this states is that you're essentially activating a more enhanced version of your basic attack, and thus you want to take advantage of this as much as you can. Skill cannot be used while Force of Swords is still active. If HP is insufficient after using the skill, Blade's HP will be reduced to 1. This skill cannot regenerate energy. So based on what you've read, or what I've read so far, it's very clear that Blade's character is one that is very similar to that of Shao in a sense, and almost like Hu Tao, in that they excel at dealing large amount of damage, but they sacrifice their health in as a result. And so what you want to do with this character is focus primarily on building as much HP as possible, since of course the higher HP you have, of course you're going to survive longer, A, but 2, that is where your damage comes from, and we'll go into that more detail very soon. So this is where Blade's potential as a character really skyrockets, because HP, as far as relics are concerned, and even in Genshin Impact, farming for HP relics is relatively easy, as it is a main, it is the more consistent of the stats that you'll find or come across. Typically you'll have HP, defense percent, attack percent, elemental percent, and typically HP tends to come up more frequently, so this works in Blade's favor. And so at the bottom here, you'll see that this regards, or this pertains to rather, his Eidolons, which I'll get into very soon. But this little bottom section here, whenever you unlock an Eidolon, this tells you what Eidolon you actually have unlocked in more detail. And so right now I'm sitting at E2 in the current closed beta version, and this E1 says when Blade hits an enemy with weakness break using Forest of Swords, he restores HP by 10% of max HP plus 80. And then the second one, Missed Dreams and Countless Regrets, while Forest of Swords is active, if Blade's HP is restored, his next attack's damage increases by 15%, and this stacks up to 3 times. So if you look at that, that's about 45% of increased damage that you get just by restoring HP. And so now we go to the ultimate. This is the death sentence. So death sentence is really important here, as while Blade's overall power comes from his HP, his maximum HP, he does also require some attack, which we'll see here. Deals 38.4% of Blade's attack plus 96% of max HP as wind damage to an enemy and adjacent targets, and 19.2% of Blade's attack plus 48% of max HP as wind damage to adjacent targets. Additionally, sets Blade's current HP to 50% of his max HP. So as you'll see on screen with regards to this ultimate, basically the way it works is you're just doing a lot of damage with this ability. And based on your maximum HP, you're going to be doing a lot of damage. The most I've seen thus far based on my testing in the beta has been around 26,000. And that's fairly high for a character of his caliber. Now, of course, there's a likelihood of being higher depending on your team composition. But based on what I've tried thus far, 26k is around the highest I've been able to achieve. But of course, come full version, I'm sure there'll be more options available. But I'll show you that in the coming segments of the video. So for now, we can clearly see that investing in HP is really important, as well as investing in wind damage and some attack, which is also, of course, a very viable option, maybe as a substat more so than your main stat. So that's his ultimate. Then his talent states this: every time he takes damage, Blade gains 1 charge stack for 3 turns, stacking up to 5 times. When the maximum charge stacks is reached, consume all charges and immediately unleash a follow-up attack on all enemies, dealing 28% of Blade's attack plus 72% of the HP loss while stacking charges as wind damage. Then restore Blade's HP by 30% of his max HP. So Blade has a follow-up attack where you have essentially 5 stacks, which you've seen at the top here. And these 5 stacks, every time that you take damage, the stacks increase. And so once you get to 5, you're then able to unleash a pretty powerful and devastating attack on your enemy. And it does say it deals 20% of your attack plus 72% of the HP loss. So every time that you've taken HP losses, you're essentially doing so much more damage due to all of that. So the more HP you lose, the more damage you'll deal, which is of course his whole game plan. And then his technique is what you'd use just before you go into battle. So your technique is typically what you'll engage with. So if you have an enemy encounter and this character or enemy is weak to wind, you would then switch into Blade and thus use your Karma Wind, as it's called, to immediately attack the enemy. And after entering battle, it consumes 20% of Blade's max HP and deals 40% of Blade's max HP as wind damage to all enemies. So pretty straightforward. Again, as I mentioned earlier, Blade's entire kit does revolve around having a lot of HP. And of course, to some extent, some good investment in attack. So as far as traces are concerned, everything works very similar to that of Genshin Impact, where you're investing in a character's talents. And your talents, very much like Genshin, you have your skill, you have your talent, you have your ultimate. Your technique is basically your free ability that's already, reached max level. And then you have your basic attack. And then these other substats here are also really important. And as you level up your character, you'll see that they unlock. And these also give you additional buffs to your character. As you can see here, this bonus ability says that if Blade's HP is 50% or lower, incoming healing is increased by additional 20%. So this, of course, is really helpful for his kit, as he can then buff himself even more, or rather heal himself even more by an additional 20%. And then, of course, you're getting max HP increase. And then this one states dead and back again. When Blade hits an enemy with weakness break using your enhanced basic attack, he restores HP by 10% of max HP plus 80. So again, the grand scheme of things, you want to be focusing primarily on HP, as his character really benefits heavily from that. And the more HP, the better. Then your light cone. Your light cone is called the unreachable side, and this is his superimposition. And superimposition is just your refinement state, just like you would say in Genshin Impact. And so his ability in his light cone, which is pretty cool by the way, it says increase the max HP of the wearer by 20% and attack by 20%. Damage when attacking is also increased by 37% and follow-up attacks by 37%. So of course, as you superimpose this light cone more, you'll obviously increase the amount of damage you do, which is really, really important. So this is a really great light cone for Blade. Of course, it's his main light cone ability. And so by, again, buffing up his max HP and of course investing in some attack will be of great merit to you and your team. And then as I mentioned earlier with his Eidolon, you have your E1, E2, all the way up to your E6. And right now, E1 is rejected by death. It says during the battle, every time Blade's HP goes lower than 50%, max HP is increased by 20% and stacks up to 2 times. So as you can see here, his max HP is increased and it stacks up to 2 times, which means that's a 40% increase, which is crazy. And this is really good for him. This is obviously really good. The more HP you have, the more power you have, as I've mentioned before. And then this one, as I stated before, it was in the section with the skill, and it says while Force of Swords is active, if Blade's HP is restored, he gets this 15% stack up to 3 times. So again, the higher you get your Eidolons, the better for this character. I would honestly say that E1 and E2 are perhaps his most strong, his most rewarding Eidolons to unlock if you were to get this character in the full version. And then of course his E3 and E5 are much like you would find in Genshin, where you want to upgrade your ultimate and your skill. And then you have your E4, which is when using your ultimate, if Blade's HP is above 50%, it deals 100% of the HP loss caused by the ultimate to the enemy and adjacent targets as additional wind damage. So if you can afford to get this far, once the game does drop, E4 isn't too bad. Of course, it gives you just a lot more damage for your ultimate, which is awesome. And then your E6 is when struck by killing blow. This kind of sounds like Hu Tao in a way. When struck by killing blow, instead of becoming incapacitated, Blade's HP is reduced to 1 and his talent is immediately triggered. So again, sounds like Hu Tao, where once you get like a one-shot kill, you don't die, you just remain alive with 1 HP, and therefore your talent is triggered, which is really good. Now, again, E6 is pretty far down the line, and if you can afford it, then by all means, but I would honestly say E1, E2, maybe E4 would be great, just because you just get a nice buff to your ultimate. But overall, E1 and E2 are likely very, very good measures to just deal massive amounts of damage. And then your relics. So this is where things can really get a bit interesting with regards to how you build Blade, because Blade, of course, as I mentioned before, he does scale off of HP, at least for his damage, but he also does want some attack investment as well. And so, as a disclaimer, a lot of this is subject to change. This may not very well be in the full version, we don't know. But for the time being, and for the sake of the video to explain how Blade's kit works, I've gone and given him the 5-piece Eagle of Twilight line relic set, which, as you can see on the right hand side, the 2-piece set increases your wind damage by 12%, and the 4-piece increases your speed by 10 and regenerates 5% of your energy after each action. And then your 5-piece gives you an additional 12%. So you're getting 24% solely based off of the kit, or rather the set. And then of course you can always go into your overall relics pieces themselves and add an additional wind damage boost to your character, which gives him an insane amount of wind damage. So as far as stats are concerned, as I mentioned, I don't want to repeat myself too much, but you want to be at least investing in HP. HP is where you want to get most of your damage from. HP attack percent would be great as a substat. And then of course you want to be having things like crit rate, crit damage, and then I've gone for an HP article. If you do have crit rate, crit damage, this also works too, but of course making sure that you have your HP percent and attack percent substats. Even some speed would be good too, because as you've seen here by the 4-piece set, the more speed he has, the better. So thinking about that alone, this can kind of give you an idea of how to build Blade once the full version does drop. And this particular set, the Eagle of Twilight line, you can obviously farm for in the game through the guide, which I'll show you right now. The guide section here, you have all the way at the bottom called Past Legacy. These are your caverns, and this is where you can actually farm for your specific pieces. And right here, this one is specifically here, I believe is the way right here, Eagle of Twilight line. So right here at the Cavern of Corrosion, Path of Raging Battle, you can invest in your 4-star. Now currently I'm at level 41 in the game, and so I don't have the level appropriate to get 5 stars for that particular cavern. But once you get to level 50, I believe that's when you can unlock things. But of course, with the beta coming to an end very soon, I won't have that opportunity to do so. But at least you'll know come full version, if this is still very much applicable, you will then go to guide, you'll go straight to your Past Legacy, and you'll look for the Path of Raging Battle. And once you've achieved level 50, you'll probably see your gold on the left hand side, and then you can obviously invest in this. And then your echoes, you can also get 5-star pieces here. This is just like your boss battles. So boss battles are different, but they only give you a set amount or a set of certain relics to farm for. So this is okay if you're looking for these particular items as a 5-star, but if you're more specific and you're looking for a very character driven relic, then these caverns are your best friend. So going back to Blade very quickly before we wrap things up. So my thoughts on Blade is that he is a very, very strong DPS character. You want to have him on teams where you have, let's say, a healer to have him boost his damage really quickly, because of course he'll take damage over time. And sure, while he does heal himself through his talent, you don't want to take the risk too much, as you'll always be using your ability very frequently. So my recommendation for a team, I already have one built, but I'll show you right now. The team setup is very simple. I have Blade, Luocha, Asta, and Silverwolf. Asta is there for increasing the speed, Silverwolf is there to debuff the enemy, and Luocha is there to heal the entire team. And so these two guys together are really, really strong at the moment. I feel like Blade and Luocha are a great pairing, as Luocha just constantly heals, and that gives Blade a chance to therefore deal more damage in quick succession. And so I'll likely try to make as much character breakdowns as I possibly can before the beta ends. Obviously I can't get to everyone at the applicable time, but I'll most likely try my best to do maybe Silverwolf next, as I think she's a really cool character, and I feel a lot of people will likely want to hear about her kit. And so that about wraps it up for the breakdown of Blade. I feel like, again, in closing, I feel like the character has a lot of potential, and if you build him the right way in terms of his HP stacking, and you just provide him with the right team comp, you can then see him shine in a lot of ways. So I'm going to leave this video as it is, and hopefully you've gotten, or received rather, enough details about what he does, and I'll leave some gameplay footage toward the end of the video. So until next time, take care. I hope you folks enjoyed the content. If you do, and made it this far, please feel free to like, subscribe, and comment, and also be a part of the Patreon by subscribing. And for $1, you can be a patron, and I'll give you a shout out on the videos. Take care, folks. I'll see you next time. Peace.